So it's almost the new year, Ray.
I know. It's hard to believe, man. I mean,
I know,
it really
tell
is
me
hard to believe.
Yeah, I know. You know, anytime it's the new year, I always think about Auld Lang Syne. And I've never understood, because it's just like, may all acquaintance be forgot, never brought. Like, why are they telling you to forget everyone you've ever known? I think this year, my resolution is going to be that I'm going to do just that.
Forget all your old friends?
Yeah. Let them all be forgot.
Well, that's all I have are old friends.
All right. Well, you know, that's,
but then again, I have no trouble forgetting things. So, yeah.
Oh, wow. You know what, Ray? The ball's dropping now.
Who's?
See it? 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Yay.
I'm sorry, who are you?
You're listening to Binder. I'm your host, Ray McManus.
All right. Well, hello, everyone. Here we are. I know it might sound a little funny. I'm not drinking, I promise. We are continuing to record remotely in this episode, but it doesn't mean that I'm all really that far away from Drew, because I can see him right here. Hey, Drew.
Oh, hey, Ray.
Dude, it's been a year.
It has been a year. Like, technically, you know, I looked at it the other day. It's been 4 years since we started doing this. Almost.
Wow. 4 years.
Which is kind of crazy to think about.
Yeah. And they said it would never last.
You know what? And they probably should have been right, but here we are anyway.
Yeah.
So, you know, in honor of that, I thought I actually pulled a clip from the very first episode of Binder.
Oh, my goodness.
Because I thought it would be fun to have you listen to you in 2020.
Oh, man. How long is that?
It's about a minute. So no, it's the whole episode. I figure we could just start with that.
It's the whole episode's worth of me asking one question.
You got that right. So yeah, I just thought it'd be fun to start out by hearing from Ray from the past.
Cool.
If you think about the art that is the most daring, the art that stays with you the most, isn't always the art that's speaking to, you know, a governmental power or to oppression. It's speaking to you and captures you. Well, guess what? You as the viewer, listener, audience, you do have all the power. And when it speaks to you and hits you in a way that causes you to pay attention, then you can really begin to see how art can really work in probably a more auspicious sort of way. You become a part of that message. You are an active participant in the messaging that's taking place. When we're able to be an active participant in that, there's a belonging that takes place, a community that forms. And I think that is the magic behind the power of art. And I don't think that's always the thing that, you know, some artists are clearly trying to do that. And sometimes they're not. And it just happens. And because as we create these things outside of ourselves, they can take lives of their own and become something to someone else that you never intended it to be. And it becomes then suddenly their voice for what they need.
So yeah.
Wow.
I thought it was sort of interesting to step back on that. You know, what's old is new again. And I feel like a lot of what you said there is still relevant today.
Yeah.
And some of it feels really relevant to the podcast. I mean, we started this out. We didn't know where it was going to go. And I think we've created something that has really resonated with some folks. And like, you know, it's cool to reflect on that sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, I think two things that stand out is, you know, absolutely the fact that it is still appropriate, sad to say in some ways that we still have to have that conversation, but then in many better ways, how important it is for us to continue to have that conversation.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is, I feel like I sounded kind of smart. And I impressed myself. No, I'm just kidding. I think one of the things that we just keep circling back around to over and over again in all of our episodes and all of the seasons, and how art and life intersect and how they rotate and revolve around each other.
Yeah.
It means it's always going to be appropriate. It's always going to be there, no matter what trial or tribulation or joyful moment we're going through, and to capture and celebrate and traumatize, whatever we need to do. But yeah, man, that's wow. It's weird to hear yourself 4 years ago.
And that's why I don't play any recordings of me from the beginning of this podcast. Because I'm timeless. But time is marching on, Ray, and we're about to hit 2025. When this comes out, 2025 will be only a day away.
Wow.
And so, I thought today we could sit back and, we could sit here and reflect all day, but I want to look forward. I want to look towards the future.
Yeah,
I want to
amen.
see what's coming up next. I tried my best before this to prep by reading some tea leaves, but, this is the South, so we really only spill it or fill it with sugar. So
That's right.
I wasn't really successful in that, but we're going to pull out our metaphorical crystal ball and try to see if we can predict what's going to happen in 2025. So, Ray, what's going to happen in 2025?
You know what? We're going to keep living, Drew. I think that is the power and testament of the human race. We are doggedly stubborn when it comes to wanting to live. I don't know why, but we just want to. I think we will. And then I'm really excited to see what kind of new art comes out, new poetry, new music. They'll say that there's nothing new under the sun, right? But I disagree, man. I think every year, every month, every day provides us an opportunity to examine and re-examine something new, something different, rekindle sometimes. And that to me, that's something worth living for.
Yeah. I mean, that is the beauty of life, right? Like we get to reflect that in our arts, and like, that's what's so cool. Even when times are tough,
right?
We still get to, reflect that human condition,
Yeah.
Now, you're a lot more tuned into the literary world than myself. I do read. It's a big joke on the show that I don't ever read. I read, sentences. But I'm just curious. Like, since you do know a bit more than I do, have you seen any kind of trends bubbling up? Do you have any predictions of what might be hot in the in the world of the literary arts in the coming year?
I mean, no, I don't think, and how boring would that be? I mean, I think that's part of what makes it so cool is that, you never know. Now I am excited about some new work that's coming out. I mean, our good friend, Julia Liz Elliott has got a new book coming out. So I'm excited to read that. Our friend Ed Madden has a chapbook coming out. I'm really excited to see that. I've seen the sort of initial drafts of it, and it is wild. So I'm looking forward to that, and then I'm always just eager to, there's particular poets that I follow, like Terrence Hayes and Nikki here in Columbia. And, that's the good thing about poetry is that you don't have to wait for the book to come out. It's being published in journals, every single month. There's something new. So there's that. But I couldn't really pinpoint other than, when folks tell me they've got something new coming out. Otherwise, I'm just as surprised as anybody else when I go into All Good Books and, I'll see something, or I'm looking at, poets and writers or something like that and see that there's a new book coming out. But I couldn't tell you in December, yep, in March, you want to look out for this book. And then April, this one's coming out. I wish poetry worked like that, but it just does not.
I mean, that's fair. I expected you to know everything about the future, Ray, but I'll take what I can get.
Yeah. I mean, I gave up on the future.
Oh no! Oh no!
I gave up trying to predict it anyway.
This is a really sad New Year's episode.
No, I gave up on. No, I did not. I mean, I guess the idea predicting the future is fun. Just to see how close you got. It's almost like reading the horoscope at the end of the day. To see how close it was to, but it's never, it is one of those things where, because it's not, it's unwritten. So ultimately it's going to be what you make it. There'll be obviously external things that we have no control over, but not everything. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, on that note, I did make a bunch of predictions about the future.
Cool.
That specifically the future in the arts that I want to share with you, and I want to get some of your feedback.
All right.
And maybe we'll look back at this next year and we'll all laugh.
I'm laughing already.
And we'll see how wrong I was about all of these things. But for now, I'm gonna take them as truth, and we're gonna go through this list of a couple of topics I prepared that I think are going to be relevant in the next year, and we'll see how right I was later. How about that? All right. So as any millennial would, when I was trying to do research for the subject, the first thing I did was open ChatGPT, and I said, "What's going to be the trends in the arts in 2025?" And shocker that it said, AI and generative technology will be a trend in the arts in 2025. It almost seems like there would be an advantage for it to tell me that. For the record, I did more research than just do ChatGPT, but I thought it would be funny to see what it would say. And of course, the top result was itself. But, obviously it's been a big hot button issue.
Yeah.
AI, generative art, learning language models, the last couple of years it's been talked about a lot. And we are seeing the effects of it now. We're seeing it being used in a lot of places, good and bad, This has been promoted as like a huge technological revolution, blah, 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 right? But I'm also seeing a lot of skeptics around this that are kind of saying a lot of this is hype. A lot of this is not really being proven to make that many changes. And I've actually seen quite a few people that work in this field kind of saying that it's already sort of reaching its limitations and what it can do, which is far from what was promised. Right. So
Right.
I'm curious, have you been experiencing that, whether as a tool or something that's been a hindrance? I'm just what are your thoughts on AI and kind of our future in the arts with AI?
Well, I mean, it definitely is a tool, right? I mean, and as one who's worked with many tools, you can't just have one tool.
Yeah.
A carpenter can't just have a hammer. A doctor can't just have a scalpel. I mean, we have multiple tools that we use. And I think that AI as a tool has, plenty of benefits. And even it gets a bad rap. But if you think about autocorrect, right? I mean, that was one of, your first real kind of sense that, and then it just kept growing from that, right? So then it became, I put in a word, now it's giving me a phrase. And
right,
so
predictive text.
Exactly. And so it's helping me to move quicker. It's helping me to get past some of the mundane things that I don't want to deal with so that I can focus on the things that I do want to deal with. So that to me, I think is, certainly it's helpful. But when you think about it, that's sort of the everyday practical side of life. When you get into the more creative idea behind art and, writing and creating and all of these things, you can't just plug that into something and it's just going to create it for you.
Right.
It's just not going to do that. And so I think early on it was this fear that, because we've watched a lot of science fiction movies, right? I mean,
Right.
Once we start getting the robots to think, it's over. They will take over the world and we're going to lose ourselves into that, right? But the fact is, AI cannot replicate human interaction. It just
Right.
can't do it. As long as we are human, and we are drawn to art, and what is it that draws us to art? But the areas where, as we were talking earlier, where it intersects with our own human experience, there isn't really a place for AI.
Hmm.
We just saw recently, right? State Fair. There was someone who had won, and it turned out that the artwork was supposedly generated by AI. There's been rumor every now and then when a poem is published that it was maybe written by, or at least started in AI, and, I suppose there will always be those who will cut those corners, but that's not going to be hard to find
Right.
when they do. I tried, just goofing around when I first got ChatGPT and was hearing about it. So I typed in, write me a sonnet about the American South. And it was every cliche you could think about with the South. It rhymed. There's no way I could have taken that and been like, hey, check out this poem I wrote about the American South. Because it lacked all of the human qualities that we expect to be represented in art.
Yeah.
So I'm not scared of it, but it's funny because I wonder if what we're seeing now with AI is what we saw years back when the introduction of email came about, right? I mean, people are like, I'm never using email. I like writing letters. Now who's writing letters? I mean, we all use email, but is that the only way we communicate? Absolutely not. In fact, we've even moved beyond email because we found other ways to communicate that can be just as effective. So yeah, that's a very long answer, but
well, no, but it's a good answer though. And like, I was actually going to bring up the State Fair issue too, because that's kind of what I wanted to get at, is that like, this is more of a local issue than listeners might be thinking. Cause I'm sure they were like sitting there being like, why are these two guys from South Carolina talking about AI in this art museum podcast? But it's relevant.
Are we actually the guys talking about it? Is this AI?
Yeah, it is. Actually, I have been AI this whole time. That's why I started making you do this online, because I got other things to do. The real me has other things to do. No, but like what I can glean from what you just said is that, I mean, it's a nuanced issue, right? Like it can be a tool. And there are artists that are using it as such and doing things that are wholly unique by like having the ability to use these tools to create something that they may have not been able to do otherwise. I think about recently, a couple of years ago, the digital artist Beeple moved to South Carolina. He's now based in Charleston. And he's using AI in really different, unique ways that like are helping him develop like new types of art, Right. And like, so it's just like any other technological tool, it creates possibilities and it creates problems, and I'm hesitant to say that it's like totally good or totally bad, but I mean, there are a few like obvious ethical concerns. I mean, like we have like misinformation being even easier to make than ever. Not that it wasn't there before, but like this is really aiding people and the ability to do it faster and quicker, right? But I think a more like obvious or maybe a less obvious one, but one that like really needs to be taken into effect is really that ecological impact of these systems, right? These like server farms, much in the same way that Bitcoin was a big issue for this a few years ago. I mean, they are a huge suck on like our energy resource. So it's like, I do think that there is things that need to be considered when using these kind of tools. But I don't know. I don't think they're all bad. I don't think it's all bad. I think that like it can be and will be used to make some really interesting art in the next few years,
Sure.
But I don't think it's going to take away entirely from like the ability to do art in the more traditional sense.
Absolutely.
And I think people are still going to crave that. In fact, like my next point, my next prediction actually rolls really nicely from this one. If you're ready for it.
Ready.
So I always have YouTube on in the background all the time, right? Like, and it just like plays videos and I just let it play videos, and half the time I'm listening, most of the time I'm not. But one of them came on. I don't know how this one got fed to me, but it was some Gen Z guy who's making like videos about his life. But he was bringing up like a really interesting point, because he was talking about how for his generation, they're not using the internet as much. Like they're kind of getting back into doing things in person,
Right.
Which especially after 2020 is sort of a revelatory concept, of like really like wanting to do things in a more analog setting, like have real world experiences with real people, which obviously for an art museum, this is a boon for us, right? Like we want you to come experience things in person. And I think there's a lot of value to that. But like, I wonder after so many years of being in front of screens, I wonder if 2025 is going to be the year where we're ready to like move back into IRL spaces.
I mean, think about it though. I mean, like we, how do most people, I mean, how do we listen to music now?
Right.
It's all MP3, it's all streamed, it's all, but don't you like to drop a nice vinyl and I mean, just sit back and just, it's the whole essence of it. It's not just, I like the nostalgia of taking the album and flipping it over and putting it down and all that. That's a pain in the ass, right? That's the whole reason why we went into, these better things that we could listen to music anytime we want, whatever we want, anywhere we want. But I still, at night, if I want to listen to Redheaded Stranger, I can drop that. I can listen to side A. I can flip it to side B. And I feel like I'm in a different place, Yeah. I'm in the music's with me. I'm deep into it. And none of that will compare to me being in a concert, right? And having it live and blasting in my face, but maybe not Willie, but being there at a live show, the energy of it, all of that around. I think in a very, quieter environment, art museums kind of the same way, right? I mean, you go there, you see really the best of the best, and you're seeing it, and then you get to question why.
Right.
And there's nobody there to, the artist isn't there to get their feelings hurt. That's kind of nice. But it's there's something about the live interaction. And there's something about going into the most basic things, the most primal parts of what we enjoy about something.
I mean, I make this argument all the time. I work in digital media, right? And I've told people from the day I started here, putting up a photo of a painting is never going to replace the experience of seeing that painting in person,
That's right.
I think time has proven me right, in a lot of ways, because that used to be a big fear. Museums were often really, really afraid of digitizing their collections because they thought that meant that no one was ever going to come in. And
That's right.
I just don't think that has proven to be true. I think people do crave those real life experiences. They do crave the ability to be around other people. And like, I really do think that, especially, considering like how much like of a trough kind of the internet has become, it's becoming just like a less appealing place to be for a lot of people.
Right.
And I know it's ironic. We're like talking on a podcast, right? Like, so you're experiencing this digitally somehow, whether it be through your phone or on the internet or on YouTube or whatever. But it's like, I do think that like the reality is that like, as time goes on, we're going to want to do more stuff in person because it can just feel more human. You know?
Yeah. There's just no real substitution, man. I mean, for the real thing, it just doesn't exist. And so that's my prediction anyway, man. Unless this show is hosted next year by two bots.
Yeah, I mean, I have been training a learning language model to learn your voice perfectly. I'll just say exactly what I wanted to say, so I don't have to edit anything later.
Man.
But until then, we're stuck with the real Ray.
Accent, no.
Yeah, yeah, that's the hardest part to get down.
I mean, I've been honing this bad boy for 52 years.
We'll be back with more predictions of the future recorded from the past right after this. Hey y'all, producer Drew here with a quick question. Are you a CMA member? Relax, it's fine. I can't hear your answer anyway. But if you are, I just wanted to say thanks. And if you're not, maybe stick around for a second before you hit skip forward on your podcast app. CMA memberships put art to work for your community, connecting visitors from all walks of life with unforgettable creative experiences. Your support helps make art accessible, helping the museum keep community benefits like free admission days available to the public each month. It helps support our public programming, including this podcast, and allows us to continue to bring you new and exciting art exhibitions every year. Of course, you get plenty of perks too, including priority registration for events, special discounts on classes, camps, and merchandise, and admission not only to the CMA, but over 150 Southeastern museums. At the CMA, inspiration is around every corner, and it's all thanks to you. Fuel creativity and South Carolina with a CMA membership. Now, thank you. And back to the show. You know, my last thought on this before we move on is just that, like, you know, I think what I have seen, you know, I have a lot of friends that work in the arts, you know, and a lot of them have been digital artists for a long time because that was kind of, we grew up in that generation where that was the hot new thing, myself included, right? And I'm seeing a lot of them go back to just kind of working with their hands, myself included. I went and did some woodworking the other day. It's not something I ever thought I would do, but like there is some value to working with your hands and working with a physical medium that is just, you do not get with a mouse and keyboard, you know? And I think a lot of people are starting to crave that a little bit more. And you're saying, I predict that we're going to see a lot more of that handmade work again in the art world starting in 2025. That's just my guess.
There's something behind that, Drew. I think that I think you're right. I hope you're right, because I mean, I think there is I know as one who enjoys working with his hands on things, I can really appreciate when I see that. The digital stuff, I always feel like, and you know, I think really that's part of it. It's like the digital stuff. I feel like you either know it or you don't. I mean, you could learn it, sure, but there's a lot of different sorts of limitations that one, you know, in order for one to get to a point where they can actually do that and do that well.
Right. Unless
you're 5 years old, I can give you a piece of wood and maybe not an extremely sharp knife and say, let's whittle, you know, let's create something. I can put a piece of paper and a pencil down in front of a middle school kid and get them to write a poem, you know, but I can't just get them to a computer and understand the program and understand formatting and
right.
be able to do those sorts of things and lay out a journal. So there's the organic aspect really of that kind of thing is extremely appealing. And maybe gets back to what we were talking about earlier, to our own primal senses that, because we can feel that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
One might even say we're nostalgic for it.
Yeah.
And Ray, having seen my outline, knows that was a segue, because the next thing I wanted to talk about was nostalgia. We have been drowning in nostalgia for years now.
We always will.
I feel like, especially in the art world, everything is just like hearkening back to some other thing. And this isn't new, right? Mm-hmm. I thought about this the other day, like Happy Days. When did that come out? Like the 70s? Yeah. And that was like obviously based on the nostalgia of the 50s. So it's like, we've always done this, right? Sure. Like, yeah. I know it's like a really obscure example, but like, it's just like we've always like been looking back at something to create the art of our current day.
It's true.
But like, I just feel like lately we've gone from inspiration into just pure replication. And that's just like my opinion. Like, and I can see Ray questioning that statement right there.
No, there's some truth. There's some truth to that. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I wonder when we hit that pinnacle, right? Like, cause I mean, I know artists have been doing this for quite a while. I think the last couple of years, I've seen a lot of contemporary artists that like they're taking nostalgia maybe in some other ways. I mean, like a lot of times it's like them like looking at like the lens of like their family life, right? Like the amount of like artists I've seen that are working with like old family photos or things like that has like been, it's been skyrocketing over the last few years, And like, I do think this nostalgia has been like a big part of the cultural conversation. And I don't think it's bad necessarily, but I just wonder is like in 2025, are we going to finally kind of move into like a new voice, or are we going to keep like pulling from what we had before, you know?
I think we're going to do both, Drew. I think we'll
Yeah.
continue to do both. I mean, there is, but I totally know what you're saying. I mean, there is a line between, paying homage to something great, and then replicating that greatness. And I think a great example of that are all the biopics that you see coming out, and have been coming out the last, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years, right? I mean, so like there's been no music since Queen. There's been no music since Elton John. There's been no music now since Bob Dylan.
And hey, these are all great artists.
They're
so it's
all
not
great artists, but
Yeah.
but what happens, right? We see that, and it's like suddenly it's like, oh, but because for our generation, we didn't have any access to what they were like when they were younger. We weren't there in the 60s and the 70s, and so there's always this harking, this wanting to experience what that type of freedom or revolution may have been like, because there was a sense of innocence then that we were just starting to lose, just starting to break away from, that now we have long since lost, right? To the point where it's now scary and dangerous. So there's that. But with every new year, every new cycle, every new political campaign, every new president, all these things that are happening are going to cause new responses. And in that will always be a driving force to something being new, something being original, something, people pushing to try to do something that hasn't been done before, or trying to do it in a way that it hasn't been done before. Because let's face it, man, if we heard a poet coming out and riffing Dylan, what are we going to do? We're not going to be like, man, that's cool. That makes me think of Dylan. We're like, dude, you're copying Dylan, man. Come on. No. But you see what I'm saying? I mean, there's always going to be that, there'll always be that duality, or at least, and maybe I'm a naive optimist, but I believe that there will be that duality. That's what sort of, we learn from our past to inform our present to better shape our future. And I think art, regardless of the medium, is the vessel, right? It's the conduit. So, yeah, I mean, I remember we talked about this in an episode. We were talking, and I think it might have been with Michael, about about guitars, right, and music, and how what is original anymore? What isn't being copied from the same 3 chords, but what we would give to be able to go back and, let's say, see Elvis Presley live when he's in the Sun years, right? Because the best example I have of my life is Aloha Elvis, and that's not a good look, man. It's just not, right? So and I think about the same thing with literature now, because there is so much more freedom, and what we can write about and how we can write it. We've got poets that are doing some pretty daring things with form, that you wouldn't have thought could even be possible, right? And it's getting published, and you're like, oh man, that is challenging and wild, and and then for some people it's too much, right? Some people is like, nah, I want it to be rhymed couplets, otherwise it's not poetry. Because that's cool with art. Everybody has their own individual personal taste, but I do think that the duality will always exist. We will have that for as long as we're on this earth, as long as we're breathing, and as long as we're wanting to live. I mean, as long as we're wanting to pay attention, as long as we're wanting to create new things. Because just as we might have that innate desire to go back to very simple, rudimentary things, we also have that same desire to create new things.
Yeah.
And that in and of itself is a challenge, and we like challenges. So.
Well, I mean, and to be frank, we may be facing some challenges in the coming years that
I believe so.
Will require us to do something new in order to tackle them, right? I mean, I think one that I'm already seeing as sort of an ongoing trend in the arts is things around ecology and sustainability.
Yeah.
And as our relationship kind of with our natural landscape changes, I think that, artists are going to respond to that in new and interesting ways. The role of art is to ask questions, right?
Mhm.
And like, I think that we have a lot of questions around the state of what's happening to our environment. And so I predict that we're gonna see a lot of artists tackling and working with these issues, because I mean, this is kind of the new state of being. It's I hate to use new normal because that was like a really tired phrase
Right.
from like a
Right.
few years back, but I mean, it is our current normal now. So like, I'd be interested to see like kind of what stems from like our changing environment and how that's reflected in art in like the coming years, if that makes sense.
No, it does. We've become more responsible as artists. I remember in college reading about sort of the biographical kind of criticism of poets and writers and artists. I mean, and my God, man, they were crazy and very careless about
Yeah.
it and very flippant about it.
Right.
Because it was this whole idea of well, I'm going to die, but my art will live forever. And now I feel like there's way more of a responsibility that artists are taking, and rightly so, because how can you be flippant on the very thing that is really providing you everything you need to create what you're creating? None of it would exist if it weren't for this planet. I mean, absolutely none of it. So I mean, I'm hopeful there. I think what's going to happen, one of the predictions that I may have is that if you think about it, I think that becomes an important level of activism of art. I mean, yeah, you can always expect art to respond for or against the political landscape, but that is ever changing and so divisive and quite frankly boring. It's just
Right.
boring. But the planet, the water, I mean, the fact that, when there's a storm that brews, it isn't something that's inspiring. It's scary.
Right.
I mean, like it's going to blast our faces off. If, the summer doesn't become a time when, I can run out and splash and play. It becomes a time of, I need to stay inside because I can't breathe when I go out there, and if there's something for us to really use art to really create activism for positive change, it should be looking at better sustainability, looking at better treatment of our environment. We've had wonderful environmental writers on our shows and talking a lot about that in a very simplistic terms, right? I mean, we're not debating whether or not windmills, kill birds or cause cancer or stuff like that. We're just talking about the simple fact that you don't have to have a science degree to look outside and see that things have changed.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think it is one of those things that, I mean, we were talking about like the literary arts, but I think in studio arts, it's going to also be true, right? Like the literal mediums that they're using, like the question of sustainability of like some of these mediums is going to come into play, because
Right.
like you think about like hundreds of years ago when like sourcing the color blue was really difficult because it only came from certain plants that they could use to create these pigments. If we start having, mass extinction of like certain varieties of plants and animals, we're running out of pigments to use. You know what I mean? Like, so it's and yeah, we can create them artificially, but what kind of impact does that have long term on the environment? Right? Like,
Right.
what are
Yeah.
these being made out of? So I think there are a lot of interesting questions that can bubble up when you start to like go down that rabbit hole. And obviously that wasn't the point of this episode, but I do think it's like an interesting place to end because I do find it to be something that is such a sign of our times. And I really think, to your point, like that kind of activist spirit of artists is going to come into play and how they talk about our world and what we're doing to it and what our relationship with it is going to be in the future.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I also want to be hopeful about it, and hope that we're going to find some really good new solutions to some age-old problems. Because what else can it be?
I was going to say the alternative is terrible.
Yeah. So, in lieu of us ending on this really dark note, I would actually like to end on something that is a little bit more hopeful. So why don't we talk about what the future of the museum's going to be like in 2025?
Yeah, I think that would be great. I think folks need to hear that.
Yeah, I do too. By the time this record comes out, all of y'all already know this, but we're going to be undergoing a large lighting renovation in 2025, which does mean we will have to temporarily close the galleries to the public. But this is going to be a short time. And, it is going to allow for us to have the opportunity to do some really big and exciting things for the rest of the year. It's going to be a really exciting year. This is going to be our 75th anniversary as an institution.
That's
Ray.
wild, man.
75 years.
Wow, 75 years. Yeah, I mean, but you know what, Drew? Every time there's change like that or an interruption to it just gives us opportunities to create new things in new spaces, to keep people interested in what's happening. And when folks come back, they're going to come back to a clean, well-lighted place.
Yeah, well, not only that, but they're going to come back and see something in a way that they've never seen it before, not just with the lighting itself, but we're going to reinstall the galleries upstairs, our CMA collection, in a totally new format. What? Yeah. Surprise, Ray. Coming up in the next year, we're going to be redoing the collection galleries upstairs. Since we have to take it all down anyway, it's a great opportunity to try something new. And so our curators are well on their way working on that right now, kind of making some early plans for what that new installation is going to look like. And I think it's going to be really exciting. It's going to give us a chance to bring out some old favorites that maybe haven't been seen in a while, bring out some new pieces that no one has seen. This is the kind of thing that you really can only do during a renovation, because you can't just take all the art down whenever you want. You have to plan these things in advance. And so, it's actually really an opportunity for us to try something new and bring something new to audiences. And on top of that, we're going to have a couple of new shows opening downstairs next year that I think people are going to get pretty excited about. Are you curious what we might have?
I'm very curious. Let's hear it. You're hearing it here, folks.
In the late spring, early summertime, we'll open up Sam Gilliam Printmaker. And this will also coincide with the return of Free Summers, which, as you remember last year, was a way for all the citizens of South Carolina to get in with free admission to the museum from Memorial Day to Labor Day, or the other way around. I can't remember which comes first. But this is it's a really cool exhibition. Sam Gilliam's a pretty well-known artist. He's probably better known for his large canvas works, where he would literally do these abstract color paintings, and then instead of pulling the canvas onto a stretcher like most painters would, he would just hang it almost like on clotheslines. So it's really cool stuff. But this is going to be a really interesting new look at Sam's work that a lot of people don't get the opportunity to see. So this is actually his printmaking work, which I wasn't on, to be completely honest. I didn't even know that he did printmaking work. And it's really cool. It's very innovative. Just like his paintings are a very innovative style, this print work is experimenting with new techniques, new ideas, and it's going to show like a very different side of a well-known artist. So I think people are going to really enjoy that. And then in the fall, Ray, we're going to open Keith Haring, Radiant Vision.
Nice.
Do you know Keith Haring is, Ray?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I think most people would recognize it if they didn't, they'll see it and they're like, oh yeah.
Oh yeah. The story I keep telling people is my mom, when I was a kid, she had a CD she played every Christmas. It was called A Very Special Christmas. It's a pretty well-known compilation from like the late 80s, early 90s of modern pop musicians doing their own original Christmas songs. Christmas in Hollis from Run DMC is on that album, which I always loved.
There you go.
But the album cover was done by Keith Haring. And this, like, in a lot of ways, Keith Haring is one of the first artists whose work I ever could actually recognize. So to me, it's really, really cool. It'll be really, really cool for it to come out in the fall and then be here during Christmas. It feels like a real full circle moment for me. But as you were saying, Ray, for anyone at home that maybe doesn't recognize the name, you would definitely recognize the work. This guy's stuff was iconic. It was everywhere in the late 80s and early 90s. Yeah. He was one of the biggest artists coming out of New York at the time. Really influential to kind of the full-on 90s aesthetic in a lot of ways.
Oh, yeah, very much. Yeah.
You can kind of see touch points of his work all over the place in all types of graphic design, graffiti art. It's going to be really cool. And this show, Ray, has 250 pieces of herring work. So this is a
massive,
substantial exhibition. This is going to be a really big one. It's going to really take over the whole museum. So it's just going to be a really cool exhibition. I'm so excited for it. I think people are going to love it.
Me too.
And it's going to be a great way to cap off the new year, which we're about to be in. And so, I mean,
we're already in it.
Depending on, I don't know when you listen to this. You could be listening to this and it could already be over.
I listened to it the day you put it up. I'm like, I've been waiting.
That's funny because I never listened to it once I put it out.
I mean, I have to, but I don't listen to myself. I listen because I'm enamored by the genius of Drew, who can take my 45 to an hour long, 45 minute to an hour long ramble and condense it into a 5-minute intelligent speech. It's amazing.
Well, I think I might have been rivaling you with some of that rambling today. So I'll have my work cut out for me.
Yeah, you're going to have
your
work cut out for you today, man.
Yeah.
but
none of you will know listening at home. You're going to love it.
You will not know.
Ray, I'm sorry, but I do have one more thing I want to ask you.
Okay.
Do you have any resolutions for the new year? Are you a resolutions guy?
I try every year. I say to myself, okay, I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it, and then I break them. I mean, because stupid. But I'll do the same resolution that I think we should all do, because I think this is a challenge that is important. And that's every day I am going to try to spread as much happiness and love as I possibly can. And now I'm going to fail miserably at this anytime I drive on a highway or secondary road in South Carolina. But I think as long as we wake up with the attitude of, I want to try to spread as much happiness and love and joy as I possibly can to the people I interact with, whether I know them or whether I don't know them. Because you never know what that kind of thing can do to impact somebody. That's a resolution worth, trying to keep. And, and if you fail at it, you just try harder.
Well, as the year wraps up, this is the final Binder podcast of 2024. It's meant so much for us to be able to share stories about arts and creatives with all of you at home. And we just want to thank you for listening. I want to take a second to thank all the guests we've had this year. I would name them all, but man, that's a long list. And that's a great problem to have. And of course, Ray, he's been such a great partner since the very beginning of this project, and I wouldn't want to do it with anyone else. Also, I want to give a special thank you to Jo O'Ryan Cook, the Deputy Director of the Columbia Museum of Art. She's been a huge supporter of this project from the very beginning, and has always come to us with new ideas, and in some ways might be our biggest fan. But we're the biggest fans of you. Everyone at home who's been listening, who's been coming into events, who's come to see the exhibitions, you're the reason that we do this, and you're the reason that we'll keep doing this. So thank you so, so much. But not to get too sentimental, I want to leave you with something a little fun. Ray was so disappointed in me that I did not have a blooper reel. So if you're still listening, Ray, this part's for you. Happy New Year. All right, serious mode. Podcast mode. We're going to see if Podcast Ray can come back out of his shell.
He can.
I believe you. I believe in you. Okay, so music cues. Welcome to Binder.
Hey, welcome back. Having to work with such a diva, man, it's got to be tough.
Dude, yeah, I know. You can tell me all about it. That's not what we're here for today. Ray, you know why we're here?
You told me to be here.
That's right.
I didn't know ear sweat was a thing. But Drew, ear sweat is a thing. Yeah, man, the wire management. We
I know.
Yeah,
I know. It's because
Drew, you look like you've just
taking things in and out of this room like constantly. So,
No, this just looks. This looks like you
It's a fire
You kind of gave up
Monette to Matisse.
to Matisse.
Yeah, Matisse. Okay. So, do you want to start? You want me to start? How do you want to say this?
I'll start. I mean,
You should start. You're the host for the episodes.
Yeah, I'm the host. I get to start.
Do the host thing.
That's part of my rider, man. It says host gets to start.
It does say that.
Which from now on, I mean, I hear everybody just do the, it's just ColumbiaMuseum.org.
Yeah. Yeah, you really don't have to do the W.
It only took me 3 years to figure that out, Drew, but
I just like listening to you say them, so I never stopped.
I'm counting them, right? Because I know I'm going to do 4. I just know I am.
www. All right, cool. That was a total aside. Thank you to me in the past for wasting my own time.
You've been listening to Binder, a production of the Columbia Museum of Art. Today's episode was hosted by me, Ray McManus, produced and edited by Drew Barron, with special assistance from Joel Ryan Cook. For more information about CMA exhibitions and programs, visit our website at www.columbiamuseum.org.